Salutations and felicitations, everyone. Welcome to Reason, Deism, and God. I'm your host, Tim Wingate. Today, we're going to be talking about reasons number 5 through 9 of the Declaration of Sinlessness. Now, if you've been listening and watching the first 3 videos dealing with this, we started off with the preamble, and then there were 3 videos that dealt with the first 4 reasons. It took a little bit of time because I wanted to really establish that there has been a diligent effort to research on whether or not their revelations were true and whether or not the revelators were dependable. I think we've demonstrated that it's highly questionable. So we're going to move on with the rest of the reasons. In this batch, we're just, as I mentioned, we're going to do 5 through 9 and save the last 2, and then what you would call the conclusion for the next video. So whereas we have determined that nature's intelligence has not revealed itself except through nature's laws, whereas we have determined that nature's laws are empirically knowable through examination and participation. Now we're going to stop there for a moment. We're going to talk a little bit about nature's intelligence and nature's laws. Now, some people don't believe nature has an intelligence, and it may very well be true. However, many people have looked at life, have looked at our existence, have looked at the world in general, and concluded that there could very well be an intelligence behind everything that we see in nature. Now, whether it was spontaneous and random, well, that's yet to be determined. Whether or not it was by some form of design, well, that's yet to be determined. You see, the issue comes down to is what are you going to believe in? What do you choose to believe in? Do you choose to hold open your mind for the possibility that there may be an intelligence far beyond and above where we are? Or do you decide that, nope, because I can't prove it, can't see it, can't touch it, can't feel it, therefore it is not? Well, that's a one way of dealing with it. It's not necessarily the best way, but it's one of the ways that people choose to do that. As a deist, I take the approach that nature does exist. It's all around me. I can see it. And nature exists as the physical reality of our existence, from the macro to the micro. And as we continue to discover and learn about our world and our environment, we discover more and more how detailed everything is. And yes, there seem to be some random events that occur. Most of the time, the random events do tend to be chaotic and destructive and not necessarily beneficial. So looking at nature and recognizing that nature has laws. Now, you can call these physical laws if you want to. I prefer to. You could call it physics. You can also call it mathematics. We find that there are patterns and repetitions that seem to occur on a regular basis within life, within just the forming of ice crystals. Sometimes, in fact, some of these things are called fractals. Now, whether the fractals are something that just occur because of the physical realities of the universe, that may be true. On the other hand, it may be from a more intelligence putting things into operation. The issue is whether or not that intelligence communicates with us outside of the obvious involvement of ours in and around and through nature. So therefore, considering these things, if there is a intelligence involved in nature, then we will learn about what it is through observing natural laws. Now, a simple experiment is gravity. We have yet to determine and figure out exactly what gravity is, at least on the level of general everyday people. Some scientists may have figured some of these things out. U.S. government and other governments may have figured them out and aren't releasing them. We don't know. But we do know that there are natural laws, and we have determined through the operation of physics that some of these laws seem to be immutable. Old saying is what goes up must come down. Deal with the issue of gravity. Yeah, gravity is going to pull you down. Anything down. Dust. Snowflakes. It keeps the atmosphere, which is just gas, keeps it around the planet. So gravity is a natural force that is in effect all the time. And the only thing you can do to counteract gravity is apply a different law, another law that is either greater or is sustainable until you are able to get out of gravity's reach. Now, obviously, we've done that with rockets. There is a greater force that is expended against gravity's pull, and objects are able to get out and away from that gravitational force, at least from Earth's. How it affects objects in the long run in the solar system, that's another story. I know that the physicists and the astrophysicists have to figure out trajectories, gravitational pulls when they plan to send a satellite or like Voyager or some of these others out into the universe. They have to plot and determine the paths of the planets, asteroids, various things that might affect the direction that the object is going to fly or float or whatever you want to call it out in space. So we do know that there are certain laws here on our planet within our gaseous atmosphere. You can slow down the effect of gravity by using a parachute, which employs a law of capture of gas. It's slow, and if your parachute is large enough, then of course it'll suspend your body. You have too heavy of a weight, and a small parachute might not work for you. I've seen Humvees dropped out of cargo airplanes, and they have multiple parachutes to drop that Humvee down so that on a platform so that Humvee can start up and drive away. I don't know what one of those suckers weighs, but it's probably more than a ton, and that's quite a bit of weight that you'd have to use a parachute for. We also know that drag racing, they'll deploy a drag chute to help slow them down. What's it doing? It's gathering the gas, the atmosphere, gathering air, and using that to as a anchor, something like that. So you can see that we do have natural law, and natural law can be suspended, counteracted by other natural law. But I'll guarantee you, unless you're going to be able to either use some form of a parachute or you have some form of a airfoil, a wing, you jump off of a building, you're going to go straight down and go splat, unless you land on a huge cushion, which then breaks your fall and allows you to survive because it absorbs and dissipates the energy. See, it all comes to what is physics and math. And so these natural laws are something that are immutable and exist, period. Now, I've just described, as we've been talking here, number 6, and that is we can know them through examination and participation. And that's exactly what we're talking about. Every time you get on an airplane, you are counteracting gravity, you're using lift and thrust, you're using a pliable natural law to counteract or suspend another natural law temporarily. That is what nature is. That's what we can learn from nature. And that is all that there is that you can prove empirically. When somebody says that they heard from an entity, an intelligence outside of their own head, or something has appeared to them claiming to be a greater entity and told them to do something, to write something, to tell other people, unless that can be proven empirically, we have no good reason to believe it. I'm going to quote here and read you just a little bit from page 4 of The Age of Reason, written by Thomas Paine, the complete edition, which is available through the World Union of Deists. As it is necessary to affix right ideas to words, I will therefore proceed further into the subject. Offer some other observations on the word revelation. Revelation, when applied to religion, religion means something communicated immediately from God to man. No one will deny or dispute the power of the Almighty to be able to make such a communication, if it pleases. But admitting for the sake of a case that something has been revealed to a certain person and not revealed to any other person, it is revelation to the first person only. When he tells it to a second person, a second to a third, and a third to a fourth, and so on, it ceases to be a revelation to all those persons. It is revelation to the first person only, and hearsay to everyone else. And consequently, they are not obliged to believe it. It is a contradiction in terms and ideas to call anything a revelation that comes to us at second hand, either verbally or in writing. Revelation is necessarily limited to the first communication. After this, it is only an account of something which that person says was a revelation made to him, and though he may find himself obliged to believe it, it cannot be incumbent on me to believe it in the same manner. For it was not a revelation made to me, and I have only his word for it that it was made to him. That, in essence, is the problem with revelation. Most revelations, as you and I have received them, are hearsay, and most religion is based on hearsay, since most of the revelations occurred hundreds of years ago. We have no way of knowing whether or not these revelations are true. Even if we had the original autographas, the original documents, the original 10 Commandments carved in stone by Moses, since the ones he broke have disappeared, supposedly carved by the finger of God. You also have 10 Commandments. Regardless of that, even if we had the writings of Saul of Tarsus, even if we had any one of the multiple Gospels, the original autographa written by the hand of Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Barnabas, or any other one, Thomas, Gospel of Thomas. Even what we have today from the Gnostic Gospels, those are copies. They're not originals. And even if we had the original, that does not mean that what they wrote was true. It does not mean that it is something that is incumbent upon you or upon me to accept by faith, since there's no way to empirically prove it, that these writings are true. There are obviously ways that things like this could have been proven to be true, but they weren't. So, dealing with these first two, we can know nature and what nature has to say simply by our participation and observation within nature. Let's move on. Whereas sin is defined as both an imputed original condition and as acts of omission or commission against any supposed supernatural entities' laws. Remember, the definition for sin is like crime. It's a transgression of an entity's, whether it's a god, whether it's man. You sin against somebody when you go against something that they have established as a rule. Sin and crime basically are the same. Now, in our world, we've, of course, tried to break these things, parse these words apart and say, oh, sin is different than crime. Crime deals with man's law, and sin deals with the divinity's laws. Okay, whoopee-doo. The problem is, most of man's laws are just variations and continuations of some divinity's laws. A good example with that would be the blue laws and vice laws. Laws that you can track back to a religious faith, a religious belief system, not necessarily back to nature or a natural law, natural situation. Moving on, dealing with the thing of sin being breaking a law, it's also an act of omission. You have sins of commission, sins of omission. In other words, even within mankind's laws, you have a crime of omission, and that religion, depending on your religion, well, let's say we'll go with some of the basic stuff, such as we've already established that the golden rule exists in most religions. So therefore, if you choose not to love someone else as yourself, if you choose not to treat someone else as you would treat yourself, that could be an omission. You're not doing what you're supposed to do, as far as the golden rule or an example. Let's move on. Whereas there is no empirical evidence that any supernatural entity has imputed any unnatural conditions upon any human persons. All right, some people believe in curses, that God has cursed you, or they're just unlucky, or that you, because you decided not to worship the golden calf, because you decided you're going to not go to church on Sunday or Saturday, depending if you're a Sabbath keeper. Any one of these situations, you're now in a situation of danger. You are now in a situation where it's been imputed to you, imposed upon you, that now you're in a state of sin and you can be punished for it. Well, these are all imaginary issues. There's no proof that there's any entity, supernatural entity, that is imputed, laid on you, man. Any unnatural condition upon any human person. I mean, if you get sick, it's because you get sick, and there are specific reasons why you get sick, dealing with your immune system. It has nothing to do with you're sick because you are a sinner. You're poor because you're a sinner. You're hated because you're a sinner. No, there's no natural entity. First of all, there's no proof that there's a supernatural entity, and secondly, there's no proof that the supernatural entity has made any laws, and there's no proof that these laws, if broken, have a negative effect and changes what happens to a person. This is all human hearsay and made-up superstition, whereas there is no empirical evidence that there is a supernatural entity other than in nature's intelligence. Just covered that. So therefore, in covering these issues, it comes down to very plainly and simply, there is no empirical evidence that there is a supernatural entity that has imposed any kind of laws other than nature's laws, the laws that we can observe and participate in, that we see through our observation and participation within the natural world, and that if you break any of these laws, that you're going to have something unnatural happen to you. There are natural consequences, which we will get into, but there is no proof that there's any entity that's created any kind of made-up rules and regulations on how you're supposed to live and conduct your life and deal with yourself and with others, that if you somehow break one of these made-up rules, these hearsay rules, I'll call them, because they come from hearsay revelations. You break any one of these hearsay rules, or you don't do what you're supposed to do, somehow something happens to you, and you invisibly change colors, and your aura starts erupting with zits spewing out pus. But you can't see that, it's invisible, and you have to have a special stone or magic glass to be able to look and see that something, right? Sorry. So I think we've dealt with these 5 issues very well at this point. Next time, we're going to go with the last 2 of the 11 reasons, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. This is Tim Wingate for the World Union of Deists. We'll see you next time.
You were born sinless. Your true freedom from sin is here. Declare your freedom from the myth of sin with your own personalized Declaration of Sinlessness and Certification of Sinlessness from the World Union of Deists now. Free your mind, body, and emotions with the irrefutable 11 reasons of the Declaration of Sinlessness. Enjoy life again. Live sin-free. No more groveling at the golden altars of revealed religionists who designed an imaginary disease just so they could sell you an imaginary cure. Both your personalized Declaration of Sinlessness and Certification of Sinlessness are printed in full color on high-quality parchment paper, shipped in their own black and gold frames, ready for immediate display. Help the World Union of Deists. Spread the light of reason and place your order now. Only $25 plus shipping from the World Union of Deists. www.deism.com. You'll be glad you did.